Dr. Kemi for Kemi Talks Media. It's Tuesday, the 2nd of September, 2025. Let's talk about drug abuse and its effect on the environment. Too many times we talk about the environmental crisis, the climate change crisis, the climate change sustainable energy and everything environment. But not a lot of people talk about drug abuse and how it directly affects the environment. I did a presentation a month ago on the NDLEA spaces on X. Now, the NDLEA stands for the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Nigerian government. I've been volunteering my time there for maybe 30 months. I had a drug campaign from February 2022 to August 2024. After my 30-month campaign, I came back briefly 3 months ago to participate at my own convenience. However, I did a presentation on the 15th of August that basically, focused on the environmental issues that we have with drugs. So, what I want to do is I want to sort of like review what I said on the NDLE space, even though there's a recorded version. I made new notes and I wanted to put it in a video that everyone will understand very well. And I want to make it short videos, that way you don't get bored with it. Now, when we're talking about climate change, there's a lot of things we need to, really look at, especially with drug abuse. There's a lot going on in the climate with manufacturing of illicit drugs. And we need to look at other things like deforestation, pollution, and also poaching. Poaching animals, sometimes you destroy the environment, deforestation, pollution, different things going on. We know in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, some people are refining, oil in the forest and they pollute the skies. It's black and this black suit. We know that if we go to Ghana, we're going to see the Galamsey, a lot of pollution in their rivers due to gold mineral deposits. However, what about drugs? So let's talk about the basics of climate change and drug abuse. Now, I'm Nigerian, okay? And if you look at what's going on in Africa as a whole, we have our storms, our flooding. In America, they have a lot of different weather phenomena like tornadoes that some people haven't seen. There was a tornado in Ghana on April 25th. Remember, I reported that? There are floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, rains, heats, tsunamis, different weather phenomena around the world. And a lot of them have changed recently. And this is what the climate crisis is composed, of. Like in Tokyo, it's snowing now in Japan after 50 years. So you never know when it's your turn. And none of this stuff is AI. I'm talking about real life climate crisis. So this is where I dislike AI, because sometimes people will portray images of climate change and it's not real. So we need to know the real ones. So on this first part of the video, part one, I'm just going to briefly talk about some drugs that are illicit, making a lot of money out there and destroying the environment. Number one is marijuana. Everybody has their questions about marijuana and their arguments. For me personally, there's no argument. Marijuana is an illicit drug. It's not good for the body. Okay, it's a recreational drug in the bad way, but it does have medicinal properties. There are countries like Ghana, which I'm studying, who have approved marijuana for medicinal purposes, but it's being trafficked more than medicinal use. And the trafficking is so high that it's being shipped into Nigeria, and they're calling it Ghana Loud for young people to smoke. The cultivation of marijuana in Ghana is mostly in the Volta region, and there was a controversy with regards to kids going to the marijuana farms to work, child labor, cultivating marijuana, imagine, after school instead of going home for their homework. So that was, talked about a lot. Now, going forward, we have crystal methamphetamine, which is produced in a very toxic and flammable environment because you have hydrocarbons involved with a mixture of ephedrine and whatnot. There's toluene in the mix, and toluene is a component of petrol. If there's an explosion, the entire street can be blown into pieces. People losing their lives, properties, and all. Now, you remember that there was a very big, beautiful estate in Lagos, Nigeria, VGC, where the NDLEA raided a mansion. The mansion was pretty much empty, but whoever owned the mansion or whoever was affiliated with the activities in that mansion, they were making methamphetamine inside that house. The NDLEA seized all the materials, gallons and gallons of toluene. Imagine on a street that could have been blown up. And guess what? My landlord lived on that very street. And I was trying to tell him that there's a drug raid on his street. And he was like, it doesn't concern me. It doesn't affect me. I don't do drugs. I don't sell. It concerns everybody. Because if there's an explosion, everybody loses their property or even life. We have other drugs out there, like we know about the coca plant. The coca plant is mostly grown in Colombia and is used to make cocaine. And even the coca plant, the coca leaves were early ingredients in the recipe to Coca Cola. So I'll talk about that in another video. However, the coca plant is what is producing cocaine. A harmful or harmless plant, if you want to call it, on the farms of Colombia is ending up as a white powder cocaine. And we're getting maybe 2 tons of cocaine coming out of Putumayo. Putumayo, Colombia is shipping out at least 2 tons of cocaine a day. And most of these shipments are coming to Africa. We're seeing huge shipments in Nigeria, in Guinea, in South Africa. And we're seeing a lot of drug violence in South Africa, people getting shot and killed. And we're also seeing cocaine being abandoned at sea. There was a shipment of cocaine that was found on the coast of Italy. There was another shipment somewhere near Sicily in Italy. There was another shipment found on the coast of New Zealand. The New Zealand abandonment was actually calculated to be 30 years worth of cocaine. Now imagine if 30 years worth of drugs can be used by New Zealanders, every single person using drug, including every baby, every kid. That's bad. That's a lot of cocaine was abandoned. So what happens is some of these containers containing these huge shipments coming from Colombia are usually abandoned by the drug traffickers when they see the coast guards of some of these countries. And that's what happens. And of course, I've talked about crystal methamphetamine and the dangers with toluene being flammable. And then opium, which is coming from the Afghan poppy. And opium, the poppy, and heroin, all related. And we have morphine, which is the metabolite of heroin. Heroin is not a legal drug. You cannot use it in medicine. It's a class A, class 1, depending on your area. It's the metabolite of heroin that we're using in medicine, and it's called morphine. So we do need that heroin metabolite. But heroin itself is injected by people. Some are snorting it. It's extremely dangerous and highly addictive. And these things are destroying lives. And when you're destroying lives, you're actually destroying the environment. For everybody that dies of a drug overdose or a drug-related crime, they're going to be buried 6 feet under. You're adding more to the environment. More graves, more destroying of the environment. Yeah, everything is related. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the things we need to do in part 2 to really stop this thing called drug abuse, because it really directly affects the environment and therefore it's a contributor to the climate crisis. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for part 2.